Here's what's coming up on episode 159. Joni Mayhan and DeAnna Simpson. The haunting was so extreme, Amy Allan from the Dead Files warned DeAnna, "There are 5 men here and they all want you dead."
That episode went viral across the world.
They were totally targeting me, which kept me isolated from my husband. And that's exactly what the house wanted. And as it's coming towards me, I am just banging on that door. I'm banging on that door. I am screaming. I'm kicking. I'm thrashing. I'm doing everything I can. And as soon as I gave in, that door just went, and just slowly opened. You have 2 choices, either to be a victim or a survivor. And I knew I was going to be a survivor because Joni and I were supposed to tell this story.
Welcome to the Big Seance Podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the seance.
So, how are you listening to my voice today? Are you using an app like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or maybe you're using my favorite, personally, which is Overcast? Maybe it's Castbox, or if you're a younger person, it's likely that you're using Spotify. I know that because I teach a lot of young peeps. Well, whatever it is, I cannot tell you how much it will help this show grow and reach more paranerds if you would make sure that you have hit the subscribe button. It would make me so happy. And it's been a while since I've said this, but if you introduce the show to a friend who might enjoy our brand of nerdiness, then why not just help them find it on their device and get them to subscribe? And while I'm begging, are you a member of the Big Seance Parlor group on Facebook? I'll put that link in the show notes. You should join us. I just poured a cup of The Healer Tea by Nuwati Herbals. You have heard me talk about it before. This tea is really good for sinus problems, allergies, and headaches, all of which I have from time to time. And you know what time of year it is. Well, this is the tea that I often have on my table when I go to events. And one of the steps in the instructions for this tea actually tells you to sniff it first, which I love. And it's likely that you'll sneeze. I've seen a lot of people do that at my table. You sniff it dry to open up the sinus passages and then brew a cup for respiratory health and to strengthen the immune system. And why the sneeze? Because the Healer Tea contains cayenne, and that's the coolest part of it. I had never heard of such a thing until Nuwati. And there's nothing quite like having the cayenne tingling on your lips for a while after you've been drinking it. So what else is in it? It contains rose hips, astragalus, echinacea, elderberries, mullein, white willow bark, and much more. Rob at Nuwati just recently hooked me up with more Healer Tea because I've been going through it like crazy. So help me thank Nuwati Herbals for sponsoring the show by visiting nuwatiherbals.com and ordering the Healer Tea, which is Nuwati's #1 best-selling product. And don't forget, for real, don't forget, use that code BIGSEANCE, all one word, to get your 15% off the order. So thanks, Nuwati Herbals. I'd like to welcome Joni Mayhan back to the parlor. She was previously with us in episode 120, discussing her book, Haunted New Harmony. And today she's introducing us to a new guest, DeAnna Simpson. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so honored to have you guys here, and it's nice to have you back, Joni. Joni has a brand new book that was just released called Hanover Haunting, the DeAnna Simpson Story, with a foreword by John Zaffis. And here's the description that I found on Amazon. As seen on the travel channels The Dead Files, My Haunted House, and the Animal Planet's The Haunted, Hanover Haunting will leave you sleeping with the lights on. The haunting was so extreme, Amy Allan from The Dead Files warned DeAnna, there are 5 men here and they all want you dead. It includes personal accounts from leading paranormal investigators, including John Zaffis, Reverend Bill Bean, Sean Austin, and Eric Vital from the Travel Channel's Ghost Loop, Shaman Michael Robichaud, Chris Nicoletti, David Allen Brown, Pamela Berry, Melissa Leeper, Mark Arvila, and Lauren Sheridan. Joni, can you tell us a little more about the haunting story that you've put together beautifully in this book?
Yes, thank you. I'd love to. This story has been widespread for quite a while because DeAnna's been on several paranormal shows, including The Dead Files, which you already mentioned. Before The Dead Files came out, though, Fox News came out and did a segment in her house. And while they were on air, a cameraman actually got scratched. And then a little bit later, they caught a shadow figure zooming through the footage. So that episode went viral across the world. And people were hounding DeAnna for interviews. Inside Edition was one of the people. It was just everywhere. And so it was really hard not to know about the story. I was aware of it. I watched it on The Dead Files, and I thought, that poor woman. And I was aware of DeAnna because we kind of move in some of the same circles. We have some of the same friends. And I knew that she was looking to write a book. I wasn't, she had originally going to have Mary Ellen Guiley write the book. And then she started getting ill and wasn't able to continue it. And so DeAnna was at a point where she thought, I really want this story told. So she reached out to one of our friends, Gina. And Gina said, why don't you try Joni Mayhan? And she connected with me. And it was just instant connection. DeAnna and I are like sisters at this point. And her story is so chilling, so scary that you won't be able to believe this actually happened to another human being. But thankfully, we have a lot of pictures. We have personal accounts from a lot of other investigators that experienced similar things. And it was just a crazy story. I've never experienced a more extreme haunting. I would say I've done a lot of scary books. This is the scariest.
I can tell you the book is hard to put down, and it's good, like movie good. And then you stop to realize that someone's basically being tortured in it. And then you feel bad for enjoying this book. I remember the first news visit, I believe that you were talking about, Joni. That was the only thing that I had seen. And when I watched it this weekend, I was like, oh yeah, I totally remember seeing that. But I hadn't seen any of the other programs. And so I've kind of caught up on most of those. And so now I'm completely sucked into all things Hanover Haunting. I want to ask you, DeAnna, what was it like the first time having someone else in your home and having them also experience things? What was that validation like?
That validation was euphoric for me because initially when things were happening, I had to question myself. I do have a daughter, Amber Mitchell, that moved in with Tom and I about a month after we bought the house. And she was not at that point experiencing the things that I was. So when we brought somebody in, I was elated. I was ecstatic because this is new to me, Patrick, like this whole paranormal world and investigations and paranormal groups, mediums, psychics. It really touched me to get that validation. I was blown away.
I bet. And especially because you tell of the frustration that you had with your husband, your wonderful husband, Tom, who we can tell is a wonderful person from the book, but
Yes.
also very skeptic and very analytical. And for much of the book, it's so frustrating. And I see this in other places. I've heard it in other stories. I've seen it in movies. I've heard it from friends who tell me stories where the husband is just so hard-headed and does not want to believe and doesn't understand. And it's just torture reading this in every single chapter. And you just totally want to wring his neck.
Yes.
And there's this moment where all of a sudden he has an experience that makes him understand. And you talk about euphoria, there's this relief that you have. And so what was that moment that made him all of a sudden turn the corner?
That moment was when we were in the kitchen. And actually, we started to smell, usually it was just me, but this time he started to smell something like rotten eggs or something like sulfuric. He started smelling something that he just could not pinpoint what it was. But right away, of course, we were always at odds at the house. I was like, do you smell that? Oh my gosh, Tom, what is that? And right away, he just kind of looked at me and he was like, oh, let me guess. He became condescending, like, oh, it must be the ghost, right, Dee? Must be the ghost. Can't even come home one day from work and it's not about the ghost, Dee? And right at that moment, he started feeling something burning. I mean, burning, like right into his flesh on his arm, on his left arm. And I remember him pulling out his chair from the table and he was like, ow, oh my God, ow. And he starts, and I jump up and I'm looking at him and he's rolling up his, shirt as fast as he could. And there was a big letter X carved into his arm to the point where it had went through the skin and it was bleeding. And at that point, when I looked at him, I just started crying and I just said, explain that, explain that, explain that. And I just remember him as I was melting and I was just having a breakdown, like, just please explain that. He just started hugging me and he was just like, I'm so sorry, Dee, I'm so sorry. And that was the moment that when I would tell him about my day and what had happened, or in the evening or whatever time it was, that he started picking up on that.
Now, before this moment, I get the feeling from the book that maybe you believe that the entities in your house liked the fact that he wasn't really seeing it and he wasn't believing you, because in a way they had you trapped kind of to themselves.
Yes. They were totally targeting me, which kept me isolated from my husband. And that's exactly what the house wanted. It wanted a problem between us. It wanted to separate us. It was causing all of this contention. And that's exactly what it wanted. It didn't want love and happiness and a family. And oh no, just the opposite.
Is it my understanding that this all kind of got started with the dreams, or were the dreams just part of it?
Started with the dreams. You're correct. Started with the dreams, and it started immediately. First of all, Patrick, when Tom and I, when we were together for, dating for about 1.5 years, we knew we wanted to be together. We knew we wanted to get married. We just wanted a home like everybody else. Well, we started looking at homes, and this was a home that I had to have. I mean, I was drawn to it. It reminded me of a childhood home that I grew up in Kentucky with my mom and dad and my brother. But as soon as, I just had all of these warm and loving feelings and smells, and I was attracted. I was passionate about this house. Tom wanted nothing to do with this house when we were looking at it. It just wasn't his style. He didn't want it in town. It wasn't big enough. There was always a reason why. Every time I said I wanted this house, there was a reason why he said he didn't. But we ended up getting the home, and immediately the atmosphere changed. And yes, the dream happened immediately, I would say within the first week or two of moving into that house.
And when Amy Allan was there from the Dead Files, one of the things she said in the show is that she thinks that your dreams, that you thought the dreams were just dreams, but she said that they were real.
Yes. And now I see that. You know, when you're in a situation, Patrick, and you're so close to the situation, you really don't see it for what it is. And remember, this was all new to me. And I was trying to logically explain it myself, but you're right. Looking back, there's so many things that I see, and Tom sees as well, much more clear than when, and Amy was exactly right. They weren't just dreams. I was living this situation.
And did that make you feel better when you heard her say that? Or worse?
Oh my gosh. I just started sobbing. I did. I just started sobbing because finally, here's Amy Allan. My gosh, she's just such an amazing medium and so wonderful that she comes into her home. And 90%, she was just dead on. And she was telling me things that I didn't even have to tell her anything. She just looked at me and she was just like, she had that hand out and that other hand. She's just like, and this and this. And she was just adamant. She took off. Oh yeah, she took off.
Do you want to tell us about one of the bigger dream moments?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
If you can. I know there's probably lots.
Yeah, but there's one in particular. Okay, so let me just explain the layout of the house. There's 2 bedrooms on the first floor, and the house was flipped. So the attic was a main bedroom with a walk-in closet and a full bathroom. Well, one night I was just exhausted. And my husband had a really bad snoring problem. So I went to sleep on the first floor. I was so exhausted that I just immediately fell asleep. Well, in my sleep, I started dreaming that I was on the bedroom ceiling looking down on my body while I saw that my body was asleep. I turned around to look at the closet door, and this big black slithering mass came out from underneath the bedroom closet. And as it was coming out, it started to have formation. And in this formation, now remember, I'm on the ceiling looking down. It was a half of a man let's just say from the waist up. He was nude. He had a black hat on, and he had this really ashy gray face about him. But from the waist down was a black, slithery, coiled-like snake form to the bottom of his body. As he approached my body in bed, at that point, I was no longer looking down at my body. I was now in my body as this thing came up on me. And I remember distinctively, and it's so disturbing. He said, "I can taste you. And he had me pinned down. I was pinned. He had his whole body on me and I could not move. And he said, "I can taste you, I can smell you, and I can feel you, and you are mine." And at that time, he put his hand on me. And as he put his hand on me, it just started scorching through my body. And at that point, I just started crying, screaming, praying. And I just prayed to God, please make it go away. I started saying the Lord's Prayer. And I opened up my eyes and I felt the lift and there was nothing there.
That's horrible. You truly have been assaulted and assaulted many times over and over. That's clear when you read the book.
Yes.
So I was wondering if there's a moment in the book that I thought it just blew my mind. And it's so like a movie. And if you don't want to tell it, we can just skip it. But there's a moment where you are lured down to the basement closet.
Mm.
And it seems to me like that's the first really huge event. And so I wondered if you'd tell that story.
Sure. As I said, Tom and I, we were having our problems about that house. And let's just say that one evening, Tom and I were in the room, we weren't just really having the best kind of night. So he went upstairs. He said, I got to go to work early. I got to get up. I'm going to bed. Okay, that's fine. So I go once again to the spare bedroom. I'm sound asleep. And I was awakened by the sound of toys like our grandchildren would play with. So I get out of bed and I'm trying to follow it through the house on the first floor, but I can't hear the sound. But now the basement door is always closed for obvious reasons. So I open up the basement door, and as I open the basement door, I start to hear the toys. It becomes more clear. I go down the steps. I'm hearing it more. As I'm ending the end of the steps, it's evident that it's there. So I turn around, I make a right, and I'm still hearing the toys, but yet I can't see them. So we had this ginormous closet, like 18-foot closet built as storage in the basement. Now, this door has a bolt latch on it because we didn't want our grandchildren in there. There was stuff in there that, you could break. So what had happened is I opened up this door and I heard the toys, and it's pitch black, of course. And I looked down to my right and I had a huge laundry basket full of toys. So that way, when the grandchildren came over, they can play with them. But the whole basket of toys were lit up. And much to my mistake, I was just in awe, at what I was seeing. So I walked into this closet in disbelief to look at every one of these toys. And with that, the closet door slammed. And I turned around and I just immediately, you ever had that fight or flight feeling like you were just about to get into a car accident? You put your brakes on, your car's sliding everywhere, and you're inches from that other car and your heart's pounding. Mm-hmm. You know that feeling? Well, that's how I felt. I was panic stricken. The toys are going off. I'm locked down in the basement. My husband's up on the, third floor. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of this room, I started seeing, and it's hard to imagine that you're in darkness, but here comes this black of the blackest mass coming towards me. And as it's coming towards me, I am just banging on that door. I'm banging on that door. I am screaming. I'm kicking. I'm thrashing. I'm doing everything I can. And it felt like the room was closing in on me. It was getting shorter and shorter, and the toys were louder and louder, to the point to where I saw that the shadow was up on me. And I just knew at that point, in my mind, I thought, okay, this is the devil. I'm done. It's coming for my soul. And I was banging so hard that I got splinters all on my hands. And I finally just fell to my knees, and I sat on my butt, and I just put my head into my arms. And I caved. I just gave in and started praying, and I was sobbing. And I just said, Lord, please don't let him kill me. Don't let him take my soul. Don't let him. And I finally just gave in. And as soon as I gave in, that door just went, and just slowly opened.
Wow. Joni, this book is in chronological order, and these are things that happened over years. And so I'm just wondering how many, nights over coffee it took to get this story out. What was the process like?
Yeah, it was difficult because DeAnna lives in Pennsylvania. I live in Indiana. So we had a lot of phone calls. I mean, we still talk almost every day, even though we don't, need to do interviews. But I was trying to nail down the timeline. And if you can imagine trying to go back and pinpoint what you did for the past 11 years, it's difficult. I couldn't even tell you what I did yesterday. So,
same.
So and some of these memories are really hard for DeAnna to have to pull out of that box she shoved them in and relive them in order to tell it to me. So there was some difficulty in the beginning getting the timeline squared away. And there were times when we would realize something actually happened a year later than what I had written it. So I had to go back and rewrite that section. And I kind of got to a point where I said, you know what, let's not be so fixated with putting everything exactly in order. I did put a disclaimer in the beginning of the book because we don't know for sure what happened in what month and what year. We can guess. DeAnna has a great memory. But yeah, so she would tell me her stories and I would write them down and then I'd send it to her and I'd say, is this right? And usually she'd say yes, but sometimes she'd add something. And we just kind of went from there. It took us a full year to write this book, which is a lot longer than I usually spend on a book.
I'm going to take a quick break, but I'll be right back.
You're listening to the Big Seance Podcast with Patrick Keller. Be sure to check out BigSeance.com for more discussion.
This episode of the Big Seance Podcast has been sponsored by Nuwati Herbals, a family-owned business operated in the St. Louis, Missouri area since 2002. The Cherokee people have a word for universal energy. That word is Nuwati. Rod Jackson is the founder of Nuwati and has personally developed their products from recipes influenced by his Cherokee ancestors. The Nuwati line consists of natural herbal products designed to actually do something. They promote healing, healthy skin, relaxation, and energy. They produce 4 lead product lines: herbal teas, herbal bath salts and scrubs, herbal bath bags, and herbal balms and body oils. They also have soaps, natural insect repellent, and a line of pet products. Nuwati has been featured at numerous red carpet events at the Grammy Awards, the Teen Choice Awards, the Oscars, the Emmys, and the Screen Actors Guild Annual Health Fair. Visit NuwatiHerbals.com and use code BIGSEANCE, all one word, to receive 15% off your Nuwati Herbals order as a thank you. Again, that's NuwatiHerbals.com, and Nuwati is Nuwati.
Thanks for joining us for the Big Seance Podcast. We'd better get back to the table while there's still some candlelight left.
And the audience listening now, one of the first things that they would want to ask you is, why do you stay and why don't you just move? And I know that people have asked you that for years, but it's important for everyone to know you are out of the house now, correct?
Oh, correct. Yes. And Patrick, it's important that people understand that when we bought this house in 2007, I believe it was 2007, when we bought this house for $218,000. We borrowed the money from my mom and dad to put down the 20% that the bank, because we both just went through divorces. And, you know, we were just starting over. You know, we were literally starting our life over financially, emotionally, merging in children. You know, it was a lot.
And I bought a house around the same time. This was right before the housing crisis, right?
Oh, yes, yes. And then, as you know and understand, the house that we bought for $218, well, the market took a dive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an older home, and that was flipped, and the inside was perfect. But the problem was, you know, a year later when I asked Tom, oh my gosh, you know, we have to move. He just looked at me like, D, we're top heavy. All the homes that were being sold around us were going for like $139,900, you know, $140,000, $150,000. And then some, you know, a lot of people would say, well, it wouldn't have mattered what it was. Well, yes, it does. Because if we had walked, you got to have credit, you know, our credit would have been ruined. How do you even get an apartment? You know, how do you get a car? How do you anything? I mean, we just couldn't leave financially. We were trapped.
And so how long have you been out of the house now?
Oh my gosh, we've been out of the house now for about a glorious 10 months.
And so clearly things have not followed you, and all is well on that front.
There is one woman that has followed me. Her name is Christiana. There is a section in the book about this. She was my protector during this whole thing. She was besides God, she was my saving grace in that home. She always protected me. She alerted me. I don't want to get in too much, but she's still with me.
That's good. That makes me happy.
Yes.
One of the controversial things, and I've talked to Joni about this, from when ghost hunters came, they very quickly just decided that the poltergeist phenomena was affecting you, and that everything was coming from you, and that you were, correct, in a sense, the poltergeist, and that it wasn't the home. It wasn't other entities. This was all being created by you. So what do you say now that you're out of the house and life is better?
Joni, I hear you.
Let's just say DeAnna and I had a lot of conversations about that after that show aired.
Let me tell you, Patrick, I'm going to be as professional about this that I can. I can honestly say that when I met Grant Wilson and I met his team, Grant Wilson as a person is absolutely wonderful. Him and I and Tom had a lot of in-depth conversations, and his team couldn't have been nicer. Mm-hmm. But there's two sides to Grant. There is a, hey, buddy, you know, I'll share a beer with you and we'll have a nice conversation about nothing. And there's also that Grant that is his professional side. And I can tell you this. He tried to explain to Tom and I that there's a lot of women who are poltergeists because of their menstrual cycle or menopause, or due to anxiety. Well, when he was explaining that to me in that home at that time, I should have been able to blow the roof off, but it didn't happen. But in all honesty, you know, I had a hysterectomy at 28, so that solves that. But I can honestly tell you, I am not a poltergeist. I do not cause poltergeist activities. My entire life as a child, we moved several times. My dad was not in the military. He was climbing the ladder with Ford. We moved a lot, like 20 times, would not be an exaggeration as a child. Nothing's ever occurred to me as far as poltergeist activities. I've never lived in a house where that has happened. If that was the case and I can induce poltergeist activity, this house is just fine, and any other home I've lived in has been just fine.
Yeah, I've, been disappointed in the world of paranormal TV in recent years as as you get connected with people in the know, and then you talk to people behind the scenes, and it's just so frustrating. But at the same time, as a paranormal nerd, I'm sucked in, and there's just some of them I'm going to watch, even though, watch with a grain of salt. But you also, if we go back a little bit, you invited, even before the Ghost Hunters, and this was the most recent Ghost Hunters from this year that they pulled back, but you have invited many paranormal teams and TV shows into the home while you were there. And is there a part of you that regrets that? Because I can also tell you, it seems like it also gave you a great education on what was happening in your home.
Yes. The only thing that I regret, it wasn't the television part, and I can explain that, but I regretted more letting people in that I did not know, because I actually feel like that's what the house wanted. It led me to do things like that because it was feeding the home. It was fueling the home. It was living off of these people and gaining strength. I mean, when you don't know somebody and a friend would say, you got to have this team in, you got to have this team in. And I would just desperately look at Tom and say, we got to have answers. I need to understand. I want answers. I want this resolved. Like, I couldn't live with that. So I had to do what I thought was best. That I regret, letting a lot of people in, a lot of paranormal groups. Let's just say that. Some groups were fantastic. Some groups, I looked at Tom and he said, okay, I'm going to go out for a beer now. I think I'll be back in a couple hours. But as far as television, I have met some of the finest people. And let me tell you right now, Jim Casey of the Travel Channel and Painless Production, Steve DeShavi, Ross Kamen, Amy Allan, those are the most sincere, nicest people I have ever encountered. Oh, the Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, The Haunting. They were fantastic. I mean, they allowed me to answer questions. They allowed me to ask questions, like Richard Valquez when he came out with My Haunted House. Amazing, amazing people. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot from them.
So you do feel like from many of those shows that you've gotten more out of it than just them getting a TV show. You've got some help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, I think that'll put some people's mind at ease, because just from someone in the know, I'm reading every time in the book, I'm reading that you decided to invite another group, especially a TV show. And I'm like, oh God, why?
Oh no,
why?
That's how my husband felt. Oh my God, Dee, are you effing kidding me with this? And I'd be like, Tom, I need to know. I need to get educated. But it was the wrong way to go about getting an education. It was not educating me at all. It was fulfilling what they were looking for. That's what was happening. They wanted to experience it for themselves. Mm-hmm. So what I was trying to get from them, I was not.
Well, now that you've gotten your story out, your full story out, what do you hope will come of this for other people or for you? What comes of it now?
You know, what comes of this is with Joni. Through Joni, I would love to go out, do phenomenons. I got a whole new outlook on this. I would love to be able to, I have a story to tell. And that's exactly what my mission with Joni will be. I want to help people not to make the same mistakes that I did. You just can't take everybody's word. Everybody walked in there, everybody had a different answer. Everybody had a different theory. Don't be panicking like I did, and just start having every and anybody in there. Know what you're doing. Be careful. Do your own research. Be careful. Know the group. Get references.
How's Tom doing?
Tom. Let me tell you what. Tom was so sick. That house was, slowly destroying us. We were both so sick. We would always go to the doctors. We were like, Tom would look at me and he'd be like, oh my God, Dee, you got bruises all over. I think something's wrong with your pancreas. Like Tom was getting sick the same way. Bruises, nausea, sometimes vomiting, constant headaches. Now we're fine. Now it's love and light. Now it's that expression, you died and went to heaven. We are just euphoric as a couple, and we don't even talk like him and I. Like I would talk to you or I talk to Joni, but him and I do not talk about that house. We have buried that house. We don't want to go back. We don't want to talk about it. We tried to sell it, but could not. Nobody wanted it. We ended up renting the home, and we're just loving our life. We just hug and love and just tell each other how sorry. And it's just been a wonderful, amazing transformation.
And so you've been able to get the family together often like you've always wanted to do.
Oh
and
my God.
all of that.
Look on my Facebook page. It's just, I got 3 daughters, 35, 34, and 33. We are constantly doing selfies, constantly shoving ice cream down our face. And we're just laughing and sitting around like a mother should be doing with her daughter, having wine, watching movie, having popcorn fights, this was the first Christmas, the first Thanksgiving, having all of our family out and people staying. Imagine that. I remember at one point it was Christmas and my children came over and we had the tree and the gifts and this. I broke down and just started crying because it was just something I hadn't had for so long that you take those memories for granted. And imagine, Patrick, a home that turned into a house that just could actually take your life, take the meaning out of what was called a family.
You can see the smile on my face right now. That makes me so happy to hear the energy just pouring out of you when you talk about how happy you guys are now.
Yes.
Here's what Joni and DeAnna had to say about PTSD.
When you go through a really terrifying paranormal experience, especially one that eclipses so many years, you become very fearful of everything, and every noise, every sound makes you look under the bed or in the closet. And I went through it as well, because I've gone through some really terrifying paranormal encounters. One of them was the Soul Collector, which I wrote a book about. And after going through that, my life changed. I don't sleep without a nightlight, and I don't walk through my dark house. And DeAnna's experiencing a lot of the same things. And I think she should talk about that.
Well, Patrick, just like you had asked me the question earlier about, what would I tell people if I met them at Phenomenicons, and what could I share with somebody that could help them in ways that through my experience that I could tell them. And it's called PTSD or post-traumatic stress syndrome. I had that in a really, really, really bad way. Matter of fact, I had it so bad. Now, John Zaffis told me, and we talk frequently, when I called him, I just told him, I said, Johnny, I can't, every room in our home has like a night light here, a decorative light here, a craft bulb burning here. When you walk into our home at night, it looks totally lit up. And I couldn't go to bed without the lights being off. any little sound that would be normal, like the ice maker working.
That gets me every damn time in my own house. Let me just tell you.
It does. And it's just like I would jump out of my skin. And it got to the point where like I was always shaking. I couldn't sleep at nights. I was very depressed. I wasn't eating. I was losing a lot of weight. So because I'm not getting the sleep and I'm not eating and I'm living in fear, I didn't want to go to bed because what I thought I was dreaming would actually a reality of what was coming true. And when I was talking to John about this, he just said, now, Dee, I think you need to go into counseling and this is normal. And that's another thing I want to talk about. People that go through a situation like I respect Andrea. Is it Perrin?
Yes.
I want to make sure I say her last name correct.
Yes.
Carmen Reed. There's so many people out there in this world that are going through the same thing that I've experienced. That's not normal. And the effect that it takes on your body and the effects that it takes on you mentally is debilitating. And I could not get through this on my own. So that last year in that house, I was just at the worst state that I could possibly and emotionally, mentally be in. So John said, listen, DeAnna, it's very normal. And what I'm about to tell you, you're going to be shocked at. And he said, yes, the PTSD is very, very true, that what happens to victims of a haunting. And he told me to go into counseling, that would help me immensely. At one time, I would have been ashamed to say that. And there's no shame in it whatsoever. It empowers you. I've learned a lot. And being in this house, having my family back, having done the counseling, oh my gosh, I'm so much more healed. Now, I told Joni, you can never, it's like a rape. You can forgive, but you never forget. There's a little part of you that will always not make you a victim, but you remember it. You have two choices, either to be a victim or a survivor. And I knew I was going to be a survivor because I was supposed to survive, because Joni and I were supposed to tell this story. But you can't do it alone. You can't go through this alone and expect to be okay. And I still have all of these lights on in my bedroom at night. I have a night light, a little craft light and string of lights, and just I can't get past that. And Joni said, well, she was the same way. She was the exact same way. And if that's what it means, who cares? So
right.
What,
I am so glad you talked about that, because mental health is such an important thing and a big concern for myself and many people. And yes. I just wondered, were you lucky enough to find a professional right off the bat that really kind of understood and resonated with you and that you liked?
Not right off the bat. No, it was a tad bit challenging because, for example, my husband's a pharmacist and he's very textbook. And when you're scientific, you're scientific. Everything has an equation. Everything has so I got to admit, right away, when you tell a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I see dead people. They're like, okay, so this girl needs a prescription for no.
Right.
No,
right. It's
I
it's
don't
a common
need psychotic medicines.
It's a common thing. Yeah.
It is a very common thing. And I eventually, after a few weeds, I found a flower, and it's a man, and I have been indebted to him for probably the last year and a half. And he's just been wonderful. And he truly does believe in ghosts. And he's just been wonderful. So I got to tell people, don't ever give up. Don't let it destroy you. That's what it wants. Don't do that. Keep searching. Find your happiness. You have to.
That's beautiful. So, Joni, what do we need to promote? And, how can people find you if they're looking for you? And even DeAnna, I don't want to assume that you're looking to put yourself out there for people to contact you, but let us know where we can find things, where we can find the book and anything else before we end our talk today.
The book is available on Amazon.com, both in paperback and in ebook format. And if people want a signed copy, DeAnna and I are planning on getting together. We're going to be visiting several Paracons this year, which I will announce on our Facebook page, Hanover Haunting, the DeAnna Simpson Story, and also on my website, JoniMayhan.com. And people can reach us through that. There's links for email on there that they can talk to us about getting a signed copy, or they can come to one of the Paracons we're visiting and get one there.
You guys rock. Thank you, DeAnna. Thank you, Joni, for sharing this story with all of us.
Thank you, Patrick. So nice to meet you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you to the following super paranerds who support the show at patreon.com/BigSeance. Susan Davey, Jim Budd, Sonia B., Kim Robb, Natalie, Anne Marie Sullivan, Josiel Lorenzo, Genesis, Justin J. Justin, Bliss is my muse, Paula Mitchell, and Amy Park Gedicke. My supporters at the parlor guest level, who can be found at bigseance.com/parlorguests, are Linda of shimmeringmoons.com, Denise Sia of Mystic Moms Paranormal, Ann Rekovich of ozparatech.com, Christopher Kohler, Diane Rax, Sharon B., Bruce Williams, Peggy Hagan, Marion Hover, Clairvoyant, Lana and John of Carbon Lilies, Nettie, James Wilfong, David Rubenstein, Dina DeCastro of Dina DeCastro Astrology, Glenna Becker, and Norman and Linda Keller. That sound you just heard was the Above and Beyond There's Not Even a Category for Your Level of Support fireworks display. Because I have 3 awesome listeners who support the show at the $10 level. Steve Skinner, Kevin Gilbert, and AJ Meredith. So thank you, Steve, Kevin, and AJ, and thank you, Paranerds.
For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit BigSeance.com. You can find and subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and just about anywhere podcasts are found. Do you have any comments or feedback? Go to BigSeance.com/feedback to learn how to get your voice in a future show. Or you can call my feedback line, 7755-TELL-ME. That's 775-583-5563. Interested in learning how to promote and share the podcast? Go to BigSeance.com/share. Thank you so much for listening. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.